It has one of the highest COVID positivity rates in New York City, but the mostly Black and Latino Highbridge section of the Bronx is just getting its coronavirus vaccine program going nearly 2 months into vaccine distribution. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen joining me now from the Bronx. Ron, this neighborhood did a lot of prep for the vaccine, setting up cubicles, getting medical equipment and supplies. So how is the rollout going there?
Well, this is a pop-up center. It's a very small community center here behind me that's part of the community here. And it's part of an effort by the state to try to take vaccine to the hardest hit communities and to essentially meet people where they are. You know, we've seen over the past couple of weeks and months that the statistics show that nearly half the vaccinations in New York City are going to white residents, although they're not half the population. And if you look at the numbers for the Latino and Black communities, their numbers, the amount of doses they're getting are much lower than their percentage of the population. So this is an effort to try and correct that, to try and, again, take the vaccines to where people are, because there's been some indications that people are having difficulty getting to where the sites are. One big problem is technology, the internet, online access. People are confused by it. People in some minority communities and underserved and low-income communities aren't as technology savvy. And that seems to be the best way to get an appointment these days. So a lot of people just aren't able to do that. There's transportation issues. There's all kinds of issues. But the bottom line is that there's less health care in these communities all the time. And so there's less vaccine here now as well. Allison?
Ron, you touched on some of the issues that community is dealing with. More than 32% of folks there live below the poverty line. Tell us more about the struggle getting people there vaccinated.
Well, it's these inequities, these disparities. It's basically the fact that there are fewer hospitals and clinics and doctors and healthcare in these communities all the time, year round. And so now, as the country, the city, the state are trying to put together this infrastructure to distribute vaccine, there's not as much to work with, just as there was not as much testing going on here, and there isn't as much treatment going on here. In this neighborhood that I'm in now, it has one of the highest positivity and death rates anywhere in the city, and that probably translates to anywhere in the country. Remember, this was the epicenter of the pandemic many months ago. So we spoke to a member of a task force of community activists named Jennifer Jones Austin, who is, the task force is trying to solve these inequities. Here's how she sees the problem in 2 different phases. Take a listen.
A part of that is because they are hesitant. They're not showing up to take the vaccine. But the other part of it is that those who do want to take it, they're experiencing challenges in actually getting access to it. And we know that in Black and brown communities, and particularly Black and brown communities where people in great numbers are lower income, may not have access to the internet, they're slow to learn about where to get the vaccine. And we see that there are also issues with respect to convenience of ease, access, like literally people sometimes having to drive several miles to get it.
So the bottom line is that the vaccines are not accessible in places where a lot of minority, people of color, low-income families live. And again, this is an effort to try and get it there. Here, they've only been open for 3 days. Each day they've had less than 200 doses, and they've had to shut down when they ran out of doses. And how much longer they're going to be able to continue this effort here and at other places around the city depends on the supply. And we've heard the problems with supply. So now there's talk of supplies increasing. There's talk of more outreach in these communities. So hopefully these pop-up sites here and in churches, community centers throughout the city, hopefully they'll have enough supply to vaccinate people who arguably need this vaccine the most. Allison?
Ron, more than 60% of Americans who have gotten at least 1 dose of the vaccine during the first month of distribution are white, according to the CDC. We're showing the breakdown there on the screen. How are they working to close that gap, not just where you are, but in vulnerable neighborhoods across the country?
It's an uphill battle. It's difficult. You know, you talk to people here who do get an appointment, and they say it's been a struggle. We met one couple who said that they have been trying to get an appointment anywhere in the city for many weeks. They really couldn't deal with being online because they're not very computer savvy. They called and they couldn't get an answer. They feel like there's not enough information out there. Here's some of what they said to us about the struggle that they've gone through to try and get an appointment. Take a listen.
We didn't know where. We had no information. Where to call or who to ask for, nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody told us nothing. That we have no place.
To everybody in the neighborhood, they saving it for their families and stuff like that.
So you don't think that's fair?
No, it's not
of course
fair.
not.
It's not fair.
A lot of people think it's not fair. You know, there's been so much talk about equity and fairness in the distribution process, but the bottom line problem beyond the structural issues is that there's scarcity. And in times of scarcity, it's always more difficult to be generous, unfortunately. And so people in these neighborhoods are suffering. Again, the death rates are high here. The positivity rate for COVID is still high here. And if the country, the city, the state are going to turn this pandemic around, you have to get vaccination rates up to 70, 80%, people are saying, to get that herd immunity. And you need people from these kinds of communities as well for moral reasons and for those practical reasons. A lot of people here are essential workers. A lot of people here work in healthcare. So again, there are a lot of reasons to bring everybody involved in this process. It's proven to be a struggle so far. Week, 8, 9 or so into this whole vaccination effort. But the bottom line is, the hope is that there'll be more supply, more generosity, and more doing the right thing as well. Allison?
Yeah, Ron, tough to get to that herd immunity when there just aren't enough shots to go around. Just one of the issues so many cities and states are dealing with. Ron Allen in the Bronx, thank you.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.